Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Irish Academy Management Early Career Development Network event. We're just going to wait another few seconds just to let a few more people come in, and then we'll get started. So if you could bear with us for another few seconds, please, and then we'll get going. Thank you. Okay, everyone, let's get going. We have lots to cover today. And first off, I'd like to introduce you to, if you don't already know, and invite Margaret Heffernan just to say a few words to kick us off. Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks, Claire. Morning, everyone. As Claire said, my name is Margaret Heffernan, and I am the chair of the Irish Academy of Management. And I'd just like to say a few words just to welcome everybody to our Irish Academy of Management Early Career Development Network spring event on the Planting the Seeds for Impact. This is a hugely important topic, something not just for early researchers, I think. Given our privileged role as academics and researchers, we've got huge opportunities to show how our academic research can influence policy practice at various levels and solve real world problems. So hugely delighted to have Professor Esther Tipman and Anya Victaig, I'm sure I mispronounced that, apologies Anya, from the University of Galway here to talk to us today on planting the seeds for impact. And just to say thanks to Claire and all of the ECDN colleagues for their huge work as always in organising these events. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Margaret. Hello, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I am Claire Gubbins, a professor at Dublin City University, and I'm joined here online by the other members of the Early Career Development Network, Professor Anne Keegan, Dr. Donal O'Brien, Dr. Jonathan Lavelle, and we also have Dr. James Duggan, and we also have as part of the committee Dr. Maeve O'Sullivan, who can't be with us today. So for those of you not familiar with our logo, I'm going to start with that very briefly. We're the Early Career Development Network, ECDN for short, kind of a breakout group from the Irish Academy of Management. And we have been working on events thus far attached to our FASTIR logo. So if you look on the screen, you will see it. So we try to run events, workshops, and engage with people to help early career academics and early career researchers around all the elements that make you progress faster in an academic career, which include funding. We talk about funding a lot, academic service, teaching, impact, which is today's session, and research, so FASTIR. And the idea being that we help you, you help each other to get insights from those who have lived this so that you can do it with a degree more ease. As I have said many times since being involved in this network, I wish I knew this when I started. And indeed now, some of it is still very, very useful. So today we are looking at impact. And we are very lucky to have Professor Esther Tipman and Anya Victaig coming later to speak to us from their perspective. To get us started, we have first, this is an overview of what the session looks like. So I'm going to cover some content on impact for early career academics. And basically to give you a clue as to what I'm covering, we in the committee have trawled across our institutions to extract information on what impact actually means, depending on which institution you're in, and how you as an early career academic or researcher can figure out how to start engaging in your work with impact in mind from now, as you're doing your PhD, to when you're applying for your first job and towards promotion. So by extracting what each of the institutions consider to be impact, and for which there's a lot of similarities. So we've done the work for you, we've pulled it all together. You can start to plan to ensure that you've considered impact from day one. Then we're moving on to Anya Victaig, the Research Impact Officer in University of Galway. And then we're moving on to Professor Esther Tipman, University of Galway, who will basically talk about her impact journey from start to now and where it could go in the future. And then we would like you to come to us with questions that you would like to ask Esther or any one of us for that matter, which we will feed back. So please use this as a forum to extract as much information as you can from everybody that's involved here. So what is impact? So there's numerous definitions and you'll get a lot throughout the session, but this is the simplest one that I could locate. A change or benefit to the economy, society, culture, public policy or services, health, the environment or quality of life. And that's a mouthful. So in one word, it's benefit. How our research, if you look at research, or how our teaching, or how our service to our university or our profession benefits society and the economy. So we're asking, how does our work benefit somebody? If I look to Galway, they have this lovely framework that basically describes all the possible areas of impact. And some of these are more relevant to you in your early career, and others would be more relevant in your later career. So just to pull out two, which we can focus on for now, which would be, academic contribution to advances across and within disciplines, including advances in understanding, methodology, theory, and application. So that's one that you can make a connection with automatically based on your research. Educational, contribution to education, training, capacity building, including through curricula, educational tools, and qualifications. Again, that's something you can connect into more immediately in your teaching. And you could possibly start to think about economic, contribution to a company's costs, revenues, economic returns, productivity, or economic growth. So these are definitions, they're quite broad. So some of you are likely already still thinking, I'm not sure how to translate that into, practical terms. What am I actually doing that hits on those definitions? And we will get to that. But for now, here are multiple different areas of impact that you could look to see which ones fit with the research, teaching, and service work that you do. When we look at the all the documents that are connected to recruitment and promotion within our various academic institutions, one way to figure out how we can identify how to make an impact is to look within the categories of teaching, research, and service. So all the institutions will have in some way, shape, or form something like an academic promotions framework that suggests here's the types of things you need to do to be considered delivering in a satisfactory or exceptional way in teaching or research or service. And when you read the text within each of those areas, you start to see measures that are about impact. Galway calls out things that you will do: inputs, funding, your knowledge, your expertise, staff. What else do? You develop new research methods, you collaborate, you learn about some area, you develop new theory, or you're engaging in some sort of experimentation. Outputs, you're producing publications. You may be producing new methods, and those are the outputs of your research. And then as you follow down the chain of that particular diagram at the very end there, it suggests that all of that should then lead to some measures of impact. But again, as you can see there, it gives you the labels: cultural, economic, education, environment, health, political, social, technological, and we still have to figure out how do we connect what we actually do into a tangible piece of evidence, a measure of impact within those categories. So let's have a look at research. Within the documents available within institutions, and this content here I've extracted from UCD and DCU to give you some examples. There are multiple categories that you have to hit in terms of research. So publication, we all know we have to publish. What would impact look like? Well, the impact of a publication could be connected to your citations, any reviews that you got on that paper, any media commentary that you got on that paper, any prizes that you got on that paper. Under your record, so you don't just publish a paper, you publish a number of papers or book chapters, and that creates for you a record, which over time maybe smaller, but over time can become outstanding and sustained as you move up in your career. And here you demonstrate your impact by recognizing how your body of work has an impact within your discipline. Have you impacted the conversation within your discipline? Have you impacted the conversation across your discipline? Have you changed the conversation? Have you added something new? And has that work that you have done marked you out as a leader in that space? You are one, if not the leader in that space. So while some of you may feel, well, I'm not a leader yet, it is about looking now at what are you doing now in a space that could potentially put you in the position to be a leader in that space. Research collaborations is a heading that comes up across the institutions. And again, we can look at what does impact in research collaborations look like. So by having research collaborations, you've made an impact. You've connected your discipline, your topic, your university to others. And another one is research culture. So have you championed or delivered initiatives that impacted research culture? So how does the way that you engage in your research impact the culture within your group, your team, your school, your university, or beyond? And again, it's all about looking at everyone. It's about looking at where you are at now. And maybe your impact on research culture now is you're one person that is delivering on a number of the citations, publications, reviews, areas that's encouraging other people to mirror you and therefore encouraging them to also progress on their research. So we're starting at where we're at and working towards looking at your impact on research culture over time. Which brings me on to becoming a leader in having an impact on research culture over time. We can look at it, impact under teaching and learning. Again, extracting from the documents that we have, academic promotions, frameworks, etc. There's the similar headings across the institutions that we tend to want to hit on teaching and learning. And they go at implementation of elements of teaching and learning and leadership of elements of teaching and learning. And then you can break it down further into whether the impact is on you, the person, your students, or the department, or the school, or nationally, or internationally. Student learning, that's our first go-to when it comes to teaching. So impact, what are your contributions to inclusive learning? What is your teaching doing in terms of encouraging leadership in learning in a particular subject or a program, or in terms of developing a subject or a program in your area of work? Have you demonstrated leadership for developing or using innovative teaching and learning approaches? Or have you done something within your department or school to develop better infrastructure, to enable better, more effective teaching and learning practices, or to support students? You can look at curriculum, module, program design, so you can work your way up. If all you have at the moment is a module to teach, that's absolutely fine. Work your way up to modules, curriculums, and then programs, and how you design them, how you assess them, and how you develop them. Within that alone, you can start hitting impact around enhancing the reputation of the program, the module, or the school, developing assessment tools or evaluation instruments that improve the way the curriculum is designed, developed, and assessed. You can improve modules and curriculum and programs by bringing in up-to-date research, connecting your research and your teaching. Or perhaps you then going forward lead out on improving curriculum design across a program, curriculum design, curriculum assessment, curriculum development. And you've changed something that impacted the reputation of the program or the school. Scholarship of teaching and learning. What awards, prizes, recognition have you gained by virtue of your teaching? What does your reputation look like? Have you solicited student feedback, demonstrating your impact on student learning within the core, within the module, across the program, or awards, prizes nationally or internationally? Have you been asked to disseminate your teaching practices, your teaching innovations to other entities, other modules, other programs, or nationally or internationally. These are all markers of your impact on teaching and learning. This one I've extracted is in the Dublin City University documents, which is around under teaching and learning, again, knowledge transfer and dissemination. Are you a member of committees, boards, government agencies enabling impact on broader elements like science, culture, education, based on your work, your teaching? Are you participating on any boards, government agencies? So you don't have to lead, you just have to be part of, so that your voice is heard within these committees, boards, so that your work can be shared, transferred, disseminated, and therefore benefit teaching and learning beyond yourself or your department or your school. What about membership or leadership in committees, societies, or agencies that will enhance the teaching and learning transfer to students? So are you involved in anything that would enable students to learn better, and students within schools, departments, and universities to identify better ways to engage in teaching and learning? So that was one way. The second way to look at impact is a much more broader way, where we look at the impact from, I'm calling it from teaching, research, and service in a much more macro fashion. So everything I've covered so far, I believe that everyone from PhD stage to early career academic first job could extract methods to apply how they're delivering impact on teaching, learning, research, and service. Within here, we're going a bit broader. So I've extracted this from the DCU documents that has a category in its academic promotions framework. So in the academics promotions framework, you're asked to, depending on the level of promotion you're going for, which applies equally to if you're applying to your first job, you're asked to hit certain metrics from satisfactory to exceptional. You don't need to worry about exceptional unless you're aiming for prof. So if you're looking for your first job, start looking at the satisfactory and substantial categories as a start. And in addition to looking at how impact is articulated within the areas of teaching, research, and service, these documents also include their own impact categories, in this case called social or economic input or enterprise awareness in university and society. And when that's broken down into practical terms that we can relate to, participation in open days and other recruitment and outreach activities. That is something within your control to do. Representing the university in the media at meetings with agencies, industry, visitors, and potential donors. Some of that is within your remit to be able to do. And moving up the scale, you could look at effective organization of open days and student recruitment activity. So these are metrics of impact for service within an academic career. This one, again, the impact category, but it is on, again, service and teaching, attendance at recruitment events, open days, supporting marketing university programs, ensuring subjects taught are up to date, liaising with industry stakeholders to inform curriculum development and advice to industry. So, for example, in DCU, one of our principles is to connect our research with industry, our teaching with industry, and to co-create teaching. There is absolutely no reason that a person designing a module from early career and up could look to how to work with industry to co-design modules and programs. This one is from UCD and looks at research, and again calls out beyond the metrics of impact within the elements of research. It calls out its own category with respect to impact, research, scholarship, and innovation. And within that, the things to look at are active involvement in professional, cultural, or community organizations, informing and contributing to policy debate at a high level or scale, providing expert advice to government, industry, and other organizations. So again, as you move up from satisfactory here to exceptional, we're moving further away from early career to more established career. But in terms of the theme of today, in terms of planting the seeds, look at what you can do from satisfactory level right now, and then consider what plans have you in place in terms of hitting impact later on in your career, which is leadership in this space. Looking at TU Dublin have, and a number of universities, Galway also, have started to look more towards the Sustainable Development Goals, which are these. So there's 17 of them. And then this point is where you start asking yourself, how do I contribute to, how do I impact any of these Sustainable Development Goals in my research area, my teaching, or the service that I provide to the university? And these, I suppose, labels can seem quite high level, but luckily we have some wonderful examples that I can illustrate to you now, and lots of links so that you can see how to mirror what you do with what other people have done to show their impact on these areas. So I'm going to take two of these. Number 4, quality education. And where's the other one? It's in here somewhere. I can't see it on my slide. Anyway, we'll get it. Good jobs and economic growth, number 8. So quality education, research. So in some of the documents that we have trawled through, you'll see lots of web pages down there, which basically provide you with examples of the ways researchers and academics have articulated their impact in response to specific sustainable development goals. So they're really useful, and it covers across the institutions. TU Dublin, DCU, UCD, Galway, UCC, UL, and I'm sure there's many more, but we ran out of space. So under research, for example, a dissertation award, a paper award is impact, because it means that your work is no longer just sitting on a desk. It means somebody else read it and considered it useful. Look at your research topics, your research results, and your implications for practice, which you have to write anyway. Do they influence how people should teach that topic, what the content of that topic should be, or how we teach? What about, do they influence government policy? And to date, some people feel, oh no, there's no way my work would reach government policy, but not necessarily true. So for example, there's a researcher in the Institute of Education who did some research on how do you improve children's language literacy early on in life, which talks about parents reading to kids early on in life. Does it impact policy? It does. It talks to the government about how there needs to be provisions put in place to provide parents from certain sectors of society with free books so that they can read to their kids. So it does impact policy. A research ally or something equivalent, something that shows that you support others in their research. And that could be students and their master's thesis, students and their degree thesis. Teaching and learning. Have you designed new modules or new programs that address current day challenges in the world of work, in the environment, in society? Have you done anything to support students or designed any initiatives to support students? Second one, evidencing, again, the goal of decent work and economic growth. Research, your research, your results, have they any implications that might influence how organizations ensure decent work for all? Have they impacted national policy? So one of the examples I've showcased there is remote working. Remote working can be considered to be more inclusive, can enable flexible working for those who are trying to juggle multiple other elements of life. So can that influence national policy? It can, with regard to how organizations and society can design the way they expect people to work. Research projects that resulted in innovations, patents, and startups. You might think that's way beyond you. It's not. In my early career, I was involved in a research project that took about 4 years, but ultimately resulted in technological outputs. So consider now. Research results impacting legislation. I'm going to call on James. James does a lot of work on decent work and gig work, and while it may be a research paper now, it could have the potential to impact the way we legislate to provide decent work for all. Teaching, what supports have you in place to help students develop new ideas, innovations, startups? Again, any modules or programs that help address industry gaps or economic gaps. And then the last one in here is professional and public, hosting conferences or being on the committee to host a conference. Initiatives to inform or educate underrepresented groups, for example. And the last piece of this jigsaw for me is, how do you articulate all this? And again, we have found some nice little tools out there that you can use. This one is from Limerick, University of Limerick, which asks you a few key questions about the work that you're doing, that if you answer them, you can draw a path from what you're doing to the impact that it can have. What are your research challenges? How does your research respond to these challenges? Who benefits from your research? What benefit will they get? And then you can start mapping out the impact on cultural, economic, environmental, health, political science, social, technological, or training as is relevant. The next one is from work on a research impact framework in Trinity. The link is again provided here, that asks you to articulate what area of impact are you focusing on. Generation of knowledge, for example, number one. Writing an outcome statement, listing off the activity you do within that area and how you will evidence it. And then the piece that's really neat within this document is the impact narrative, how you describe your story, how you describe, yes, I did a paper, yes, I did a PhD, but here's how it's bigger than just that. And there's an example, there's plenty of examples in the document, but here's ones here. Impact area, generation of knowledge. The outcome, I co-created an open access research publication. What did you do? You published a paper, but it's got cited, it's got an altmetric score, it's got a Skyvel score, it's got citations, it might have been referenced in the news or in a blog. And then down below that is an impact narrative where you get to explain and talk to, with the goal of generating knowledge in an under-researched area. I did this. I published groundbreaking research. It was highly cited in. I co-created it with a group of research collaborators. It advances, it makes a difference, which was highlighted in a media article. And the importance of the publication has been recognized by policymakers, including XYZ, resulting in an impact on policy. So you can make a nice, neat story between a simple paper to you and its impact in many different ways. So everyone, thank you very much for your time. I hope that was a little bit useful to get you started. I'm going to ask you to take 5, and I mean literally take 5. So if you want to take a mini rest break, and then we're coming straight back. So if we can be back here, please, at 10, and we will move you on to your next speaker. So just take a minute. Thank you. Okay, everyone, I would like to hand you over now, please, to Donal, who will take it from here. Thanks, Donal.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. So on behalf of the Early Career Development Network of the Irish Academy of Management, we're delighted to introduce Anya Vighai. Anya is Research Impact Officer for the University of Galway and leads the development and implementation of the university's strategy to begin to embed a culture of research impact across the academic schools and research units. ONIA manages the impact component of the institutional review of research performance, orchestrating the development of compelling research impact case studies that showcase the university's contributions to society, and plays a vital role in the European landscape of research impact as a member of Enlight, RISE, Work Package 8, Impact Assessment and Frontiers of the Common R&I Agenda, in which University of Galway is co-leading. We're absolutely delighted that Anya could join us for this morning's session, and I'd like to welcome Anya to the session.
Lovely, thank you, Donal. Thank you all, and I'm very happy to be here. I'll just share my screen there so I can, let's see. I think you might need to enable screen sharing just to, let's see. Perfect. Lovely. So can everyone see the presenter mode slides there?
Yeah, perfect.
Lovely, lovely. So this morning
Anya, sorry to interrupt. We can see two sets of slides at the same time. If you
Oh, lovely. I need to switch it over. Let me just see. Okay, I think, can you see a presenter? Lovely, that's great. So this morning I'm just going to cover, what we mean by research impact. A lot of that might have been covered there by Claire Gubbins. It was very interesting. And top 3 tips for early career academics. So this will be, quite a brief overview. So, as we know, research impact has many definitions. You'll see that across funders and institutions. But here, the European Commission defines it as a change or a benefit to the economy, society, culture, public policy, or services, health, the environment, or quality of life. But if we think of a one-word definition, it's simply benefit. How our research benefits society and the economy. So here we distinguish between academic impact, considered to be the research knowledge contribution to a field of study within academia, and non-academic impact, which is impacts that go beyond academia, defined as follows. So academic impact is the demonstrable contribution that excellent research makes to academic advances across and within disciplines, including significant advances in understanding method, theory, and application. While societal and economic impact is the demonstrable contribution that excellent research makes to society and the economy, of benefit to individuals, organizations, and nations. So if you keep asking who benefits and how, you'll find the impact. So define more broadly then, impact is rich, it's varied, it's not easily quantified. Impacts can be immediate or more long-term, and it's often from accumulated knowledge rather than a specific research finding. So our classification system of the different subtypes of impact here attempts to reflect this rich variety. It's based on a taxonomy developed by the European Science Foundation. So some of those examples, for example, cultural, if we think of cultural impacts, contribution to people's understanding of ideas, reality, values, and beliefs. Or health impact, contribution to public health. Oh, just excuse me one moment. My dog has turned the TV on. Lovely. Sorry about that. I have the remote control. You can't do that again. So looking at the health subtype of impact, so contribution to public health, life expectancy, health-related quality of life, prevention of illness, and reduced health inequality. Or a social impact would be contribution to community welfare, again, quality of life, behaviors, practices, and activities of peoples and groups. So, it varies, and of course, you can capture your impact and your research can be aligned to more than one impact. It can be aligned to many impacts. But the idea here is categorizing impacts in this way allows you to consider the full range of possible impacts related to your own research. And it's useful before, writing a funding proposal, or even when just planning for impact, to identify the impacts and impact goals related to your research, and then you can expand on those further within the proposal or indeed the planning tools. So this is the impact journey. This is when we talk about pathways to impact. You'll come across that sort of terminology a lot in this research impact landscape. The impact journey describes how research can lead to impacts on society and academia. It traces research over time, distinguishing between 5 different stages on the pathway to impact. So you're familiar with a lot of this. Inputs are what researchers need, which is, of course, funding and staff and the likes. And then activities are what researchers do. So your R&D, theorizing, collaborations. And then your outputs are the products of your research. So things like publications, patents even. It could be an exhibition if it's relevant to your research. Things like that are outputs, the products of your research, and can sometimes be confused as an impact. So then the outcomes are people becoming aware of and using these products. So they generally occur in the more short to medium term. While impacts are the changes in society that result from outputs and outcomes. So typically they occur in the more longer term. So the diagram illustrates or demonstrates this pathway. And the thing to note, and something kind of important to note really is researchers often misunderstand the meaning of impact, and they think that the result of their research project or study is the impact, rather than the use of the knowledge or sharing of an output from that study that leads to a change. So if we look at some of the outcomes there, cited outputs, or even uptake of a new device and therapies, uptake of tools, instruments, media coverage, it's common to confuse that as an impact, because it's such a wonderful outcome of your research. But if you think about those outcomes, always ask yourself, but what happened next? What happened after that? What did it do? What was the benefit? What was the change? What occurred next? And you'll find the impact. The other thing is, people regularly ask, when does the pathway to impact stop and the impact begin? And the answer is, the impact starts when you see benefits. So impact is made up of 2 things, reach and significance. The biggest impact has both, but one or the other can still be meaningful. So reach refers to how widespread the impact is, the extent, spread, breadth, and/or diversity of the beneficiaries of the impact. So ask yourself how you can expand, replicate, and scale up your impact. Significance refers to how important or valuable the impact is to each beneficiary, the degree to which the impact has enabled, enriched, influenced, informed, or changed the performance of policies, practices, products, services, culture, understanding, awareness, or well-being of the beneficiaries. So not the prevalence or magnitude of the issue. So you might ask yourself how you can make your impact more significant and meaningful for the people you want to benefit from your work. And put in simple terms, if my research saves someone's life, I've made a significant impact. If my research saves millions of people's lives, the impact is no more significant, but now it has reach as well. So to summarize that, impact is a change in the world which results from research. We've looked at the different subtypes of impact, and it could be things like enhancing policy and society, improving health and well-being, sustaining our planet and people. So now we know impact is not the underlying activities or pathways that aim to affect these changes. So publishing academic papers and the public engagement activities or presenting at conferences. However, these are still a crucial part of the impact journey, and it's still really important to think about them and talk about them. So of course, you're going to talk about them in your proposal. If you were to write an impact case study to showcase and evidence your research impact, it's still really important to draw on those pathways, which then have led to your impact. So last is the top 3 tips for early career academics. So I suppose the first is develop impact literacy. Of course, it's very important. You know, becoming impact literate is crucial for early career academics to understand how their work can create meaningful change and contribute to societal progress. So some key steps to become impact literate is to understand the different types of impact, understand what we mean by impact pathways, learn how best to engage with stakeholders, and of course, seek training and resources, and there's plenty of that out there. The second tip is to plan for impact. So we know it's best to think about impact at the beginning of a research project. It gives you the best chance of getting your research into the right hands to make a difference. So by strategically planning for impact, it will allow you to identify who in society stands to benefit from your research. Work out who you can connect with, how to connect with the right people to create impact, and of course, write more convincingly about the potential impact of your work within your funding proposal. The third tip is engaging in co-creation of research. So actively engaging with stakeholders. This includes a wide range of policymakers, practitioners, industry partners, community members, the public, throughout the research process. So this is co-creation of research involves collaborating with stakeholders in the design, implementation, and dissemination of research projects. And it ensures that your work addresses real-world needs, which then has a greater chance of being maybe adopted or implemented by end users. So we know that the best impact plans are collaborative or co-created with those who benefit from the research. And of course, to quote Campus Engaged, who are pushing engaged research is advanced with community partners rather than further. And just to very quickly note, this is quite a brief overview, but all of the tools and resources I've covered are in University of Galway's Research Impact Toolkit. It's a toolkit to provide the community with the tools to plan, capture, communicate, and monitor the impact of your research. This toolkit was a collaboration with Ireland's wider research sector, developing shared definitions and approaches to impact. So it's entirely open, it's available for anyone to access. We've covered a lot of what is research impact. Claire, you had mentioned the impact planning canvas from UL. We have the same canvas in the plan section, so it's the same thing. Very, very useful document for planning for impact. And that's it from me. So thank you, Gurmahagi. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
That's great, Anya. Thank you so much. And I think that was really interesting as an overview of impact, and really interesting to hear about your role in that as well. So at this stage, just for a couple of moments, everyone, it would be great to open up to the audience to see if there are any burning questions while we still have Anya here with us. So I think we can use the chat function, or if anybody would just like to raise their hand and go ahead and ask Anya a question. While you guys are thinking about questions, Anya, I'd love to start off with a brief one, if that's okay. So I was just thinking, if you are currently doing your PhD, or you're nearing the end of your PhD and you're thinking about putting an application together, a CV together for your first job, and you spot that you've got maybe a gap when it comes to impact, is there like a slightly, I don't want to say a fast route, but is there something there that's almost like a relatively easy way to demonstrate that for an early career person?
Yes, yes. So I think the easiest thing to do is Claire had put it up on her slide, the impact planning canvas. So the impact planning canvas can be used at any stage of the research life cycle. So the ideal stage to use it is before you put pen to paper and before you even consider writing a proposal. And it forces you to think about, what is the challenge? How am I addressing it? and who do I need to involve to ensure that I can address this and meet the needs of the people I'm trying to benefit. So it gives you this lovely bones of a plan. So then when you do complete your funding proposal, you have that impact plan made out with your impact goals, objectives linked to that, and how you'll implement things. And the key thing is the engaged element of it, which is involving the right stakeholders, involving them throughout the whole process. And if you're at that stage and you're really planning for impact, you're kind of, you can be ahead of the game a lot of the time, because a lot of academics aren't planning for impact in advance of writing funding proposals. So it's definitely, I think, a key tip.
Fantastic, Anya. Thank you so much. Any other questions for Anya?
I just have a quick question for Anya. Anya, do you think that the whole SDG things is really pushing this agenda?
So it's like, if that's pushing the agenda, or the whole what's pushing the agenda in terms of research impact is that we really need to articulate the value of what we're doing, and I suppose, in terms of spending public money, we do need to articulate the value of what we're doing. But in terms of the SDGs, what's really useful about the SDGs is that it's created a common language. So we all speak this language now, and so in terms of your reviewers, no matter what funding you're applying for, if you're aligning your research and not only to the SDG goals, but drill down to the targets, all of a sudden they know where you're coming from, what it is your intended impact goals are. And I think with I suppose the only issue with the SDGs is that they are so broad, so it is important, if you can't, drill down. And yeah, align your research to those goals. And it makes sense in terms of the grand challenges of our time.
That's great. Anya, we've got one question in the chat here as well from Neve. So Neve is wondering, what are the ultimate metrics that are most necessary in terms of career progression for academics? And if you can see the chat there, Anya, you can see that Neve has given some examples. And ultimately, she's wondering how you prioritize so that you're not trying to stretch yourself too thin with all the different things that you could be doing in terms of impact.
Yeah, so this will be kind of, I think specific to each university and how they, promote the promotion kind of scheme. But I know that in recent years, we have knitted in impact. And so articulating the impact of your research has become really important now in terms of promotion. But when we talk about things like publications, we are moving away from that type of metric, but we're not quite there yet. So again, it really depends on your institution and what they value in terms of your outputs and outcomes. But what we will see happen is we're moving away from all of this H-index publications, all of those metrics, to valuing more the pathways to impact, your engagement initiatives, and of course, eventually, you'd hope some of the impact of your research. So it's hard to say what would be of most value in your own institution. As I said, in ours now, we are putting weight on research impact and being able to articulate that. But just to say, in stretching yourself too thin, so with the public engagement side of things, yeah, I agree. I think, ultimately, I think what's most challenging about planning for impact is time. It's academics are teaching, they have research, it's incredibly busy. But what I will say is that the benefit of planning for impact is incredible. Putting time and effort into how you will engage with your stakeholders, who to engage with, to involve the right people in your research, will really make it more worthwhile carrying out the research, leading to, it may not lead to impacts, but certainly the pathway is strengthened, and it's well worth your while. But yeah, I hear you in terms of spreading yourself too thin. It's a challenge for everyone.
Anya, thank you so much. I've been furiously making notes here as you've been talking through some of your tips there. That's been really helpful. So Anya, I think that's about all we have time for. And
I think one more just came in there from Neve Riley again about, just to say, would you say that RT Brainstorm and the conversation are good in terms of articulating? Yeah, they're excellent. We would always push them as well. And they're a great way of getting yourself out there, and in terms of practicing this type of communication. they're excellent. Just to note, I'll put it in the chat box, a link to our toolkit. I'm sure you'll have your own tools and resources available locally, but everything, as I said, is totally open. We regularly run webinars, online webinars that are open to all on, inviting impact experts, both nationally and internationally. So do come along to those, and I'll send you a link to the toolkit now.
Great. That's fantastic. Anya, thank you so much again for your time this morning. We really appreciate you coming along and giving us an insight from your perspective. And I think that was really valuable for all of us, regardless of our career stage. So thank you so much again. So Donal, I'll pass back to you now.
Thank you, James. And just to echo those thoughts, to thank Anya, extremely valuable presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time. I think we're all incredibly impressed that your dog knows how to turn on the television as well. So that's we may have to do another presentation on that, so explain how he knows how to do that. But thank you so much, Anya. We really, really appreciate it. So it's my job now to introduce Professor Esther Tipman. So on behalf of the Early Career Development Network of the Irish Academy of Management, we're delighted to introduce Esther. Esther is Professor of Strategy in the University of Galway, serves as Head of Discipline Management and Co-Director of the Centre for Entrepreneurial Growth and Scaling. In preparing this session, we could think of few better academics to speak to an early career audience about the subject of impact. If I'm honest, I've tried to get Esther to speak at almost all of our events due to her phenomenal career trajectory while an early career academic herself, but mainly due to her hectic schedule. We couldn't make it happen until today, although it certainly wasn't my lack of enthusiasm on her part or a lack of me pestering her over the last few years. Before joining the University of Galway, Esther was a faculty member at University College Dublin and research fellow at Grenoble School of Management, France. She held a Marie Curie Fellowship funded by the European Commission and Irish Research Council and was a visiting professor at University of Vienna. Esther's current research focuses on the international strategies of organizations, particularly global scaling and digital businesses. Her work has also concentrated on the enhancement of the strategic contribution of subsidiaries to multinationals. She's worked closely with several scaling firms and multinational corporations in Ireland, France, the UK, and the US on case studies and research projects. She has been published in the Strategic Management Journal, Journal of International Business Studies, Organization Studies, Journal of World Business, Journal of Management Studies, Global Strategy Journal, Harvard Business Review, and Sloan Management Review, to name but a few, creating an enormous impact. I will leave the description of that impact to her own presentation. What I can say is that her research has received several honours, including awards and nominations from the Academy of Management, Academy of International Business, Strategic Management Society. Esther currently serves as Senior Editor for the Journal of World Business, on the editorial boards of the Journal of International Business Studies and Long Range Planning, and is Chair of the Global Strategy Interest Group at the Strategic Management Society. Esther is also passionate about teaching and strives to enable students and executives to critically evaluate how decisions influence long-term organizational success in a global context and impact society. She's taught in the areas of strategic management, global strategy, international business, and qualitative research across all levels, including executives in Austria, Ireland, Germany, and France. And once upon a time, Esther was a PhD student with me in DIT, so I have had a front row seat to watch her career path. It has been nothing short of extraordinary, but genuinely not at all surprising. Esther was and continues to not only be an extremely impressive academic, but a generous friend and colleague. I'm delighted that she could join us today, and I know the audience of early career academics will benefit hugely from her insights, as many of us have done since our days as PhD students. So you're very welcome, Professor Tipman.
Thanks so much, Donal. It was a very flattering introduction, so I feel really humbled, but I'm delighted to be here. The IAM, in fact, was my first ever academic conference, so I'm always really, really excited to come back and to join various events and also to attend the conference. Yeah, and as Donal said, unfortunately, I hadn't been able to join some events previously, but I'm really delighted to be here today. And yeah, I suppose when the ask came to speak around impact, I was also, I have to admit, half nervous. because I would put myself in a bracket on being on that impact journey. And having attended a lot of Anya's workshops and some other similar type of engagement that are being offered by the University of Galway, I realized also how much I still have to learn, where I should go. And I also, even looking back and preparing for today's session, I also reflected probably on some lessons learned, mistakes committed. So you're probably going to see quite an honest reflection on some of the things where, looking back, I could have done better. And also then hopefully that will stimulate some discussion also on some of the things that you may keep in mind. But as Anya even has said, like the planning for that impact journey, I mean, it's probably a trend. It doesn't go away. So I think it's just super important also that as part of the IAM that we have those kinds of conversation and have that forum to share maybe experience and some lessons learned. But as I said, it will be quite an honest reflection on some of the mistakes committed along the way. So I hope that will also be useful to see that we're on a journey together. So I have a couple of slides to share as well. So I might screen share. And also, I also noticed that Sarah Bowen is on the call. So some of the work that I will mention is also in collaboration with Sarah, just to give a nod to her. She's, I think, a third year or final year PhD student in our department, doing some amazing work. So shout out there to Sarah as well. And obviously some of the work that I at least mentioned on the academic side was also, in fact, with Donna. So yeah, we have been PhD colleagues, but we've also done some really fun work together over the years. So I'll screen share. Just make that full screen as well. Yeah, so what I would like to do first is I would like to introduce my program of research a little bit more, because that will anchor then, I suppose, the impact journey. And what Anya explained earlier around finding this impact maybe in your body of work, that very much resonated actually. We're sort of on this impact finding journey. And trying then also, I suppose, to demonstrate that impact. So that's also something that really resonated a lot with me. So I'll first introduce some of my program of research, then where we are in terms of the impact journey, and we're trying to write an impact case study at the moment. And I have some honest reflection, as I said, on that, and then a couple of lessons learned, and that will hopefully then stimulate further discussions. So I would see myself as a global strategy scholar. And as Anya would have said herself, obviously there is still this notion of academic impact, which is still important, though the landscape is shifting, obviously, with economic and societal benefits moving more to the front. But academic impact, I mean, is still, at least still at our institution as well, important to demonstrate. So some of the work here is focused on multinationals, headquarter subsidiary relationship. So there's also an emergent story there around impacting how subsidiary leaders in Ireland maybe plan for the future, develop and attract their mandates. And some of the work, as I mentioned, there is with Donal as well. The work that I will focus on today is more this work on scaling, in particular on global scaling. So again, underpinning that is a bunch of research around scaling. And there's the paper with Sarah there that I mentioned earlier. So big shout out to her. Again, it's dating back quite a long time. So I would say the first publication in that area was probably around 2018, so 5 years back. Some of those ideas, they date back even more than a decade. And again, having worked with stakeholders, especially with the IDA Ireland along the way, who have a specific focus on scaling and high growth FDI. So does the American Chamber of Commerce as well. So because obviously these high growth businesses investing in Ireland, they are an engine of job creation. So it is a priority area in terms of economic development. Yeah, so I mean, from the outset, we've always had some stakeholder engagement. But what I will zoom in specifically is on this notion of, okay, maybe what is maybe has been in my work with colleagues, and a huge credit here to a couple of, I mean, all of that is teamwork. And in fact, we're writing this impact case from the perspective of the Center for Entrepreneurial Growth and Scaling. So also, you know, big shout out again to some of the other colleagues who are that I have worked with, including Sarah, but also Professor Jonathan Levy. But yeah, so we're on this journey of maybe trying to write an impact case where we can actually really demonstrate in a convincing way the benefit and the change that our work would have brought to some of our stakeholders. So we had to also, I suppose, frame it and maybe zoom in on a certain aspect of our work as a center. So, and as part of that journey, I would like to speak about that particular event that you see a photo here of centrally. So what we did, that was about a year ago, we did a training event for the Enterprise Europe Network. So the Enterprise Europe Network is funded by the European Commission, and it brings together a network of, I suppose, supporters and trainers that work with startups, scaling businesses, SMEs across Europe to support them in their internationalization, scaling, and growth ambitions. So, for example, Enterprise Ireland, some of their coaches and employees of Enterprise Ireland that work maybe with high growth businesses or scaling businesses on the ground would be part of that European-wide network where those trainers or coaches build capacity so that they bring that knowledge back to their home country as they work with, let's say, scaling businesses in particular. So what we were invited to do by the European Enterprise Network and ESMIA, so ESMIA is the European Innovation Council for SMEs and executive agencies, is to deliver a training in the European Commission. So that photo is actually taken in the European Commission in Brussels, where we delivered that training together with Jonathan. I think you can see me somewhere there at the front left here. Yeah, I am. Jonathan is here at the back. He was trying to hide. But yeah, we delivered a train-the-trainer event to about 40 plus participants from all over Europe in person in Brussels, where it was in essence a capacity building exercise where we trained them on bespoke training exercises, that one-page exercises that are an output from our research-informed insights, that they can bring back those training exercises into their home country, and as they mentor and coach scaling businesses, can apply and use, and hopefully then the ultimate beneficiaries are those scaling companies, because it accelerates and enables their scaling journey. So that was one intervention that we did. We also did a virtual training with, it was over 100 of those scale-up advisors from across Europe, where we just introduced them to what is scaling. So it was very much an awareness building exercise. But let me then, I mean, the initial feedback also, sorry, just again, it's just a snapshot here from LinkedIn. The initial feedback on that particular intervention was amazing. So we got quite some traction on it on LinkedIn, great shout outs, how valuable they found it. That's obviously publicly available information. And also, I suppose the internal feedback that the European Enterprise Europe Network and the European Commission would have gathered was very positive. So we think we're on an impact journey here, but I come to the but now because I come to the but also as I was trying to explain a little bit more how we got there, maybe to do something within the European Commission, because obviously we would have had similar smaller kind of interventions locally with Enterprise Ireland, with the IDA, but being invited to do a workshop in the European Commission, obviously, I mean, Anya used the word reach, right? In terms of reach, it obviously gives us an amazing platform for potential reach. And also because there were scale-up advisors bringing these exercises back into their country. Hopefully we get to see maybe a multiplication effect at some stage, yeah, where it may snowball more wider. So, but I'll get to some of that a little bit more. But maybe, yeah, as I said, a couple of maybe reflection first on how we ended up there, right? Being invited into the European Commission. I definitely have to, reflecting on my journey, my scholarly credibility, and by that matter, Jonathan's scholarly credibility, it really opened the impact pathway. So some of the influencers who enabled those types of engagements, they were familiar with our academic credentials. So in fact, some of them, my key contact within the European Commission, he's a former academic. So he would have seen, I would have met him at conferences. We did PhD in similar areas, internationalization, international business. But he chose not to pursue an academic career. He chose to go into to work in the European Commission. I mean, that was obviously something I did not know in advance. But he was aware of my work as it related to some of the issues that the European Commission was trying to address. Similarly, within the Enterprise Europe network specifically, there was also someone there who was part-time doing a PhD on those topics. And again, he became aware because he was doing a PhD of my work. So it was random. To Anya's, ideally you plan these things. I did not plan these things. It happened. But there's maybe this, in that sense, we were lucky. As I said there, we were lucky. But it was built on strong academic foundations. I suppose that's probably the key point. Again, maybe also how academic impact and maybe other sources of impact may go in tandem. Similarly, a presentation and engagements we did with the World Investment Forum of UNCTAD. Similarly, it was enabled by academics who were aware of our work and had links into UNCTAD to enable those. But we were lucky, we didn't plan that. I should probably do better going forward. So I spoke about this idea of impact, of this maybe the snowballing effect. So yeah, because we did this train the trainer exercise, which has reached across Europe, obviously that is now, it has this potential for snowballing. And what we do see now is because others are became aware of what we did within the European Commission, that our training materials are being passed on with our permission to other jurisdictions. So for example, they're now being used in Canada. So in places in North America. So again, we're on a journey towards greater reach of our impact. And look, it's something, again, we didn't plan for, but it snowballed from the engagements that we had. What we have also since found out is that some of the trainers that we trained, because they were team leads, they trained also other trainers that they have within their team. So yeah, there's definitely something there. Again, we should have done better in planning for it. But we're trying to, and I don't know, Onya might have the secret sauce here and maybe some more structured advice on that. How to do better as opposed to enable some of that reach and capture better this potential impact in unexpected places. But yeah, but for the moment, I just wanted to mention it because it might initiate some discussion. Something else I probably learned along the way, what I should have paid more attention to. I'm certainly being better with it now. I wasn't maybe at the start of my academic career, to mind better my professional network. I mean, LinkedIn obviously being the key platform here. I mean, what definitely Ireland has a closely knit and supportive business community. So I think, I mean, it's definitely, even if you speak to, I mean, at least that's my experience. If I speak to other academics internationally, they always admire us in terms of the possibility and tightly knit community and the opportunities it offers for engaged research, for collaboration, for partnership, the support that we may get. But often leaders also change roles, right? Or they progress towards other roles, other organizations, and so forth. So maybe your key stakeholder, your key influencer now, maybe in my case, be it the IDA Ireland or Enterprise Ireland, they may change. Yeah. So again, trying to, manage my network better, because it's a journey. It's a long journey over time until you really have this demonstrable impact. I should have probably done better at minding my network, professional network from early on, so that as roles are changing, that I'm still know who is who, where are they now, and maybe it opens other possibilities. Actually, yeah, I might come back to it later. I think something that has definitely helped, well, it's obviously there's a lot of stakeholders out there that are relevant, but within those stakeholders is probably still identifying who are really your champions and the advocates for academic research. Because obviously, we're all, especially management, we're all aware of the theory practice divide. That is real, that is a real challenge, but there are champions and advocates out there that truly appreciate academic research and maybe able to give you that little bit of push that you do need to accelerate your impact journey. So here's maybe just one example. Again, this is taken directly, I suppose, from some of the work that we would have done. So Elaine Murphy, she's a site lead of one of the scaling companies here in Galway, Signify Health, absolutely amazing company. I would have known her actually from a previous engagement. She would have been very active in the network generally. So I would have known her from prior research activities. But when she was appointed site lead of that particular subsidiary, I reconnected with her, and it was just over coffee, just to see, hey, I heard you're changing roles, sounds really exciting. It wasn't with anything very specific, except for maybe minding my network and see what it could lead to and keeping in touch. But it became a case study then, a teaching case actually, that we did specifically in Signify Health on their scaling journey, which is published with Ivy Case Publishing. But I think so that's on our academic side, and that's perhaps not the impact, but what transpired afterwards was that for Signify Health, that engagement and that exposure of having a case study on their unit published with one of the, at least for international business case studies, Ivy Publishing would be seen as a lead publisher. It gave her as a leader a lot of credibility internally with stakeholders in headquarters. They were impressed what is possible for her as a leader to engage in a meaningful way with the university, to have outputs that showcase their organization to a wider platform. And they were also then nominated for the an Invest in Ireland award. And again, she posted that on LinkedIn. I said, oh, congratulations. And she replied, and look, actually your engagement played a part in that. So again, it's just something, it's sort of scaling relevant. There is perhaps somewhere a pathway to impact that we could measure and do more with going forward. But those kinds of activities were only able, I think, that only happened because there is an advocate there that truly believes in the value of academic research, that I've sort of minded in my network over quite some time, and then reconnected, and then it opened an opportunity. Oh, yeah. So this is my pain point, or our pain point at the moment, to be quite frank, is demonstrating the change we have made. So I spoke about, we did that training intervention, and even let's say that does impact maybe on Signify Health, but they're soft testimonials. They're not hard measures yet of maybe impact and the true benefit that we have brought in a hard measured way. And because we're writing the impact case study, and it's primarily based on the work that we did for the Enterprise Europe Network, which we did a year ago, we're now a year later trying to measure impact and systematically in a quantifiable way. To what extent did it really change? Obviously, we had this really good feedback post the training, but did it actually really change the way once they went back to their day-to-day advising jobs, the way they engage with their client companies? To what extent has it really helped the entrepreneurial ventures on the ground to scale maybe better? So we are a year after the training now, so we have an opportunity, or we're taking this opportunity now to go back and trying to measure, but we're trying to retrofit a little. I mean, we should have been systematic at that time to capture maybe their starting condition better. And Anya, again, you know, she may have some other advice on measuring and planning for that impact journey, but we really didn't do well on that. Because if we had more structured measures of them, of their awareness, of their knowledge, of their understanding, maybe going in, now that follow-up measurement exercise would have been a little bit easier. Having said that, the European Commission and the Enterprise Europe Network, they're super supportive. We are engaging with them, and we have that opportunity to go back to those that attended the training to try to get some harder evidence. Yeah, but it's that's sometimes how I feel now a little bit about that. I should have done better on that one. I think also another reflection is, I suppose we all have a voice. We all have often we all have something to say, I suppose, because we're doing good research. But I think there's certainly colleagues that I know that are really great at advocacy, that have a fantastic voice in terms of maybe being very well able to be a live expert commentator, to speak on the radio, to speak on the news, to speak on prime time, for example, and so forth. And they can really connect well with the audience to change their perceptions and then again enable impact. It's not my strength. I've RTE brainstorm articles and the likes, but it's not, I wouldn't see myself, I mean, if there is an area in terms of my personal development, right, this is definitely one up there where I think, okay, maybe that's an area I should stretch into more, because we would have a lot to say, I think. But it's not something that comes natural to me. Maybe part of it could be language barrier. I mean, I'm German I am German, so English is not my first language. That could be part of it. But maybe also is being on the spot and knowing a bit of fear and anxiety that makes me nervous, maybe trying to talk to a big audience in a live way. But I think if you are inclined towards that, developing your voice and maybe being somewhat provocative also in a way of how you try to engage with the audience to get attention. If you're leaning towards that, I mean, definitely go for it. There are definitely colleagues that I would be aware that are amazing and really were able to accelerate the impact journey by doubling down on that. I believe, Donal, I know we also may have breakout groups planned to bring some of those reflections back to all of you to see what you think. But I don't know, Donal, which way you would like to take it from here. Would you like to take some questions first or go into the breakout rooms?
The plan is, I think if it's okay with you, I think we might put people into the breakout rooms to see some of their reflections and what questions they come up with, and then we might bring them back to you and then continue on the conversation from there, if that sounds all right with you. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think maybe Anya is still on the call, and I don't know how long Anya can stay, but Anya, maybe is there anything else from your side to maybe add before we send everyone out into the breakout groups? Because I think that's how I think about our work, that we're not quite there yet, right? In terms of this demonstrable impact.
I think it's good to provide, a realistic journey, because we can, have all of these lovely bells and whistles, but ultimately the reality is quite different, and as we know, it's not linear, the sort of road to impact, and it goes off in all sorts of directions. But it was interesting you saying about how you might not have planned certain engagement activities, but they sort of naturally occurred. That's just the nature of it. And I think it's that will happen, but of course planning will ensure that it does happen, but yeah, it's lovely to hear a realistic perspective and journey. So I can stay for as much as I can. I'll have to jump off at some stage, but I'll join the breakout rooms, but I might need to leave at some point.
Yeah, I mean, but definitely it's definitely that journey. And I think someone also earlier said, I mean, different priorities, especially at early stage. I think also what really when your early stage career, I mean, as you probably also saw in my presentation, it's teamwork, it's a team effort. You know, this is, if you also then think, you know, what's maybe my most promising research in terms of impact, most of it could be in teams. So how are we synchronizing our efforts and doubling down? I'm a great believer in teamwork, because we have so many demands on our time. But I mean, we all know that teams, if it's a high-performing team, they perform better than individuals. I mean, we know all these things. But this work would have not been possible without a lot of these amazing colleagues, and some of them are on the call here. And also then maybe to play on different strengths that we bring in terms of impact journey. I mean, for example, my colleague, Professor Jonathan Levy, he's more tenured. He has worked on the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, so they're quite high profile, high prestige. Yeah, so he brings that a lot of additional scholarly credibility. Perhaps I then bring more, because scaling is sometimes often associated with younger firms, maybe more this sort of younger phase, but we complement one another quite well also in terms of the kind of personality, in terms of how we engage, and maybe can lead out on different audiences, let's say, right? Because Jonathan's voice would work maybe better with different audience compared to my voice, in terms of, in addition to us maybe specializing in slightly different areas. So we were also able to complement on that quite nicely, just to see where our strength in terms of progressing that impact journey in particular.
So just as we're getting ready for the breakout rooms, can I just ask even a quick one as we're getting organized for it there? I'm just interested, you kind of have addressed this, but and even just the advice for early career academics, like, has your thinking on impact, like how has this evolved? It obviously has evolved, but would you think differently now in terms of how you planned for it 10 years ago? How has this evolution happened?
Oh no, 100%. I mean, I think when we did PhD, it was a desirable add-on or something like that. I think that's how I would describe it in short. Now, I think it's absolutely essential to have both academic impact and this wider impact on, let's say, broadly speaking, in our case, it's probably business and society and policy, but in the management realm. And now when I'm doing a study, I work with the toolkit and I plan from the start. So I found it super useful. But I'm still learning as well, you know, and that's what I think about this forum is, I mean, I think we're all a bit on a learning curve with that. So I think, yeah, and so that forum is really useful, maybe then also then in the breakout groups to see what works or what has worked for different people that are on the call. But yeah, I found the trainings and the toolkit very, very useful. And even the impact toolkit, I think some of that, Anya, I think you can nearly, even if you spend half an hour, sometimes we did just have an hour initial brainstorm, then came together as a team. So even in let's say in 2 hours of an effort, you can cover a lot of mileage in terms of initial thinking through what could happen, what should happen. Obviously, then engaging with stakeholders it takes more effort. But in terms of planning for it, in initial planning, it's actually not that time intensive, I found.
Thanks, Esther. I think, yeah, and on that team, I think even amongst ourselves in the committee planning this session, our discussions have been really interesting, even around what our different institutions are doing and our own views on it, I think have been really insightful as to how little agreement there was sometimes in the beginning. So it's been really interesting. So on that team, we're very interested to see what people think in the breakout room. So we'll do that and collate some questions and bring them back to you and then carry on with the discussion. So thank you so much to this point, Esther. And to thank Anya again as well. She can't stay with us. We really appreciate you taking the time this morning. Thank you so much. So
Thanks a
if
lot.
we're ready, Claire, we might go for the breakout rooms.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Esther. I'm moving people in the committee around here, so there's one of us in each room. So-
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. If it's
That's
random, it
okay.
probably randomly hit some.
Yeah, it was random, but anyway, I have it sorted now, and I'll be joining a room as well. Esther, your honesty is very much appreciated. Thank you.
I hope it worked
Yeah.
because I wanted to be upfront and really say, these are the things. Well,
Yeah.
I went a bit wrong along the way because. Well, I
Yes.
hope it stimulates discussion and that it's not just this picture perfect, which is not the case.
No, and we don't want picture perfect. We invite purposefully people who will tell the truth because these are early career researchers, academics. They need to learn from everybody's mistakes. So no, Esther, thank you very much. I'm going to drop away from you for a minute to moderate one of the rooms, and I'll be right back. Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's super.
Thank you.
Aisha, Gayev, how are you? Can you hear me? Hey, Donna, how are you?
Hello there, sir. How are you?
I'm grand. I'm grand. It's great
Yes.
turnout, isn't it?
Yes, no, it was great. It was, well, great speaker as well, Esther, so delighted you could do it. But this event, we did it in person once, and it was a challenge. So just the online, especially this time of the year as well, I think seems to work for people.
Oh no, 100%. I mean, and you can do so
Yeah,
much online now, and
yeah,
it's hard for people to carve out a full day, but to
it
carve
is.
out 2 hours or 2.5 hours, that's
Yeah.
a better ask, I think.
So we decided on when we actually had people at the conference that we would do something in person because people are there at the conference and it's in
Mm,
there once a year for in person and outside of that. So we do this in spring and then do the virtual writers retreat twice a year. It's been running actually. So that's worked very well as well. I know Margaret did the first one and then we've shared them around. So that runs in spring and winter. So it's been pretty good. And actually, we're seeing this year as well. People who've got involved in this network have started coming on council and things like that as well. So hopefully we're having impact, Esther. Hopefully as they
I don't know, 100%, because once you have the everyone engaged, it's brilliant.
I think we nearly have everyone back, Claire, I think, to wait.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I think we almost have everyone back into the main room here. So that time seemed to fly by, which I think is always a sign of a good breakout room discussion, isn't it? So look, I guess Esther, we might go straight into some questions because I think it would be great to have some time to talk through some of these ideas that we've been discussing. So what we might do is I might just start with breakout room 3 where I was, and then I'll hand over to the other ECDN members here who can feedback from their sessions. So beginning with the room that I was in, so we did really interesting discussion that dominated most of our time around maybe some of the tensions around publishing and the needs to publish as an early career researcher. So an interesting area that came up, I guess, and that we were chatting about for a little while was that's potential misalignment, is what I think one person called it in our group, between academic journals and the process of publishing or needing to publish in academic journals versus having impact as it might be defined by organizations or by governments or by policymakers. So something we were discussing was that academic journals often, are very heavily focused on a singular discipline. So HR or strategy or marketing or whatever it might be. And often the requirement there is having a very clear theoretical contribution or a contribution to literature. Would you have any thoughts or any reflections on maybe this type of tension or conflict that exists there in terms of wanting to be practical in your focus or practitioner focused or policy focused versus maybe needing to scale that back for the sake of getting a publication in an academic journal?
For sure, it's not an easy one to. I mean, it's that certainly it can be a tension that is maybe not easy to navigate. I think what I would have always done is even before, and I think Anya has mentioned that as well in terms of collaborative research and engaged research. But even before I settle on a research question in any study, I run it by a lot of key stakeholders in terms of ideas as an open brainstorm, so they inform the research question, and it's enjoyable. It's an enjoyable process as well because it's a little bit of a sanity check of your ideas, of the potential relevance of your idea. So I enjoy that because it sharpens my own thinking. But I think that I don't do action research per se, right? So it's not in that way engaged, but definitely in terms of positioning the phenomena, articulating the relevance of the phenomenon and shaping the question, that's very much stakeholder informed. And that obviously seeds something then for going forward. But I think that at least I find helps me with that tension. I don't know if that maybe partially answers the question, but I found that front loading was helpful.
Sure. No, yeah, fantastic. And I'm not sure if we were expecting a clear answer, but just your thoughts on it as someone
Yeah.
who's navigated this would be really helpful. And the other thing, and it's sort of a reflective question as well, linked to that, was that tenure. Many people in our group are on tenure tracks, early career and in the first few years of our careers. And tenure tracks, for better or worse, tend to be, I guess, heavily focused on having a set number of ABS, 3 or higher publications at the end of the 3 years or at the end of the 5 years or whatever it might be. So the other stuff that you're doing around impact and funding, for example, may not even be considered in the context of your tenure track. Is that something that you think that we need to change, or is there even a way to change that for tenure tracks or for future early career researchers?
I mean, it's probably a couple of questions, James, that you ask, and I think it's hitting on important points. I think it's always very important that you know the institutional requirements. I mean, at the end, it's your job, it's your livelihood, it's your bread and butter once it comes to it with tenure track. So I think in many ways, it's important to be pragmatic about those and to be very clear, or to seek as much clarity on expectations as you possibly can to set you up, or that you can work towards those expectations to set you up for getting tenure. Or to think about the wider landscape as in, what potential other institution may suit me better, because in terms of the value they place on maybe pure academic output vis-a-vis, or what kind of balance, would they like to see vis-a-vis academic output, vis-a-vis maybe impact. And as Anya even mentioned, maybe some institutions are moving, but the emphasis might slightly differ across institutions, maybe also internationally, right, in different jurisdictions. So that might also depend on your mobility. So understanding those requirements in terms of trying to balance it. Can we shape those criteria? I mean, possibly as senior leaders within institution, as you progress in your career, then we have put somewhat an influence potentially in informing promotion requirements. But overall, I think the field, we definitely think we see the field shifting towards a greater importance of impact beyond academic impact. And I don't think, I just think it's going to get, that's my intuition. I would think it's just going to get stronger, even in management. So I don't think this is a trend that's going to go away. So the more you can prepare for it now and set you up for that journey, the better. But you have an immediate goal. This is tenure, I think, and understanding those requirements and being ruthlessly pragmatic about them, I think, is also important, because that's your livelihood.
Sure. Thanks, Esther. It's really good advice, I think. Anne?
Thank you. I wanted to come in here because it dovetails completely with the discussion that we had in our room. I was with Anya, Valentina, Neve, and Shagaya, and the questions which came up were, how do we choose journals to have impact? Do we look at citations? Do we look at impact factors? And some of the advice or some of the ideas were, trying to look at institutional requirements. A lot of universities have a list, which is a kind of journal quality list or target list of journals, but also look at the conversation happening in a journal, because you're more likely to have your work amplified if others who are publishing in that journal are publishing in a similar, on a similar types of topics than you. So while the journal choice is important, you have to be judicious about what is going to support your work, what conversation are you joining. There was also a question around, I think I certainly see it here in UCD, that I think Esther said it earlier on, that impact was a kind of nice to have kind of thing 10 years ago. It's absolutely critical now. And as part of this, what we're seeing is a lot of resonance around a journal's impact factor alone cannot stand for the quality of your work. The quality of your work must be taken into consideration in promotion processes, to the extent that we align with the DORA principles, where it's not appropriate to just use metrics. You have to look at the quality of the work. And then another question that came up was, how do you you know, maybe you need to think about this in the planning of the impact as multiple forms of communication. That if you get something into a good journal and it meets your institutional criteria and has a high impact factor and all of these things, what can you communicate then from that? We had a little discussion, and Anya was involved with this too, about maybe if you're working in a team with people who are not early career scholars, but later career scholars, maybe we don't see the importance of impact even as much as early career scholars do. So because we maybe came up in a different system where, again, there was more of a legacy of it's nice to have, but, you know, just get that publication. So I think we would have encouraged people in the breakout room to really plow their own course there and you know, advance the importance of impact. I think that was everything. Anya, you might want to, if I missed anything.
No, that was everything. Thank you.
If I may just quickly, while you were all in the breakout group, I found another photo. I might just screen share it quickly, and I hope it's actually, yeah, on another study. And Anya, you probably see it's the canvas there on the screen. And then our PhD students have just started really whiteboarding and trying to move along, because the canvas obviously has also steps implied. Yes, I think, is it 9 steps or something like that, Anya? Yeah, and we were whiteboarding and doing a big brainstorm on that. It was super useful. Yeah, and we did that in January. So I just thought I shared it just to show it. Actually, it's quite fun. And we came up with some really good ideas. More work obviously to do, but yeah, this is just a study that is at the start, and just to show you actually doing it better now.
Brilliant, Esther. Thank you. Donal?
I'll hop in there. James, we had a really interesting discussion in my group with Sarah, Lorna, Olivia, and Nada. And I suppose Esther's covered some of these already, because I think there's a big question around what to prioritize and when. And I think, as you said, to be ruthlessly pragmatic at certain times, I think is very good advice. But I suppose there's and the real positives from the session, I think, around giving clarity and this focus on what to prioritize. But I suppose a question, interesting one, especially in case of maybe management, business, academics, where sometimes the impact or the alignment with things like the SDGs maybe isn't as clear as it might be for somebody from a different field. So what are the challenges around that, or when impact, as you foresaw, maybe doesn't happen the way you thought it would, or potentially fails? And Lauren had some interesting takes on that, I think, from our own research as well. But the challenge is that when you run up against things like that, where maybe the alignment isn't that clear, or the impact doesn't work out the way you thought, I suppose, for advice for early career academics who run up against those difficulties.
I mean, I think on the SDGs, obviously they're focused on sustainable development and grand challenges. So probably a lot of our work somehow speaks to it, but maybe sometimes it's very core to the SDGs, and at other times it's perhaps more peripheral. But I would think on that one is probably to think about your beneficiaries. Again, I mean, that would be my gut feel on that one, because maybe it speaks to different stakeholders, different beneficiaries than those that would be seen as core within the SDGs. So I think even in University of Galway, obviously we would like a lot of our research to be closely aligned with the SDGs, and it's desirable, but again, it's not a mandatory, a hard criteria in a way. Obviously, a lot of funders would like to see it as well, so it's definitely beneficial to think hard about that. But I wouldn't see it as a hard threshold, and I would maybe broaden the horizon in a way, or broaden, that you're thinking about who are my stakeholders, my beneficiaries, and can you demonstrate impact for whoever is your relevant stakeholder. That would be my sense on that one. The failed impact, that's a really good one. Donald, do you remember who asked it specifically, maybe just to give me a little bit more context? Because it's obviously, if things don't go to plan, I'd say we all come up with that challenge at some stage if we haven't already. So I'd love to hear more.
Lauren, even if you want to come in and give some insight yourself on it, because it relates to your own research as well. I think we're on mute there, Lauren, if you want to.
Sorry. My PhD, I'm doing it part-time, and it's looking at how principal investigators relate to failure, how they associate with failure and how it affects their career path. And kind of the learning or the not learning from failure in research.
Ah, okay. I could actually see that being very relevant, that you may have some really some nice lessons that can help us all perhaps to be better PIs once we win grants and leading research teams. So maybe you're just more at the start of a journey there that could be mapped out. I could see that could be some really valuable insights potentially as coming out of your study that open pathways to impact. And I mean, potentially beneficiaries could be, I mean, PIs themselves, maybe even funders, in terms of how can we maybe make better funding allocation decisions or evaluation of grant proposals. I don't know, but there could be a range of beneficiaries here, potentially. So maybe it's just to try the impact canvas if we haven't done already, to start mapping it out where it could take you.
Yeah, because we're looking at even just all aspects of the career, even in terms of supervisions or publications, and it's kind of, we often don't hear about the failures, we hear about the successes.
Exactly, but we all know at the same time we can learn a lot by reflecting on failure. So I would imagine that there can be some really valuable insights coming out of your study. But it might just be that you're just perhaps more at the start of the journey yet. But I think generally, I think impact also or the journey, at least that's what I found, the impact journey became clearer once there was a bunch of studies. That you start to think, okay, you know, I'm developing expertise in a certain area. I've developed networks, relationships in a certain area. And then it became, it's more platform. It offers avenues to accelerate that impact journey. But then again, you know, if your early career, again, maybe having the right collaborators, the right people in your networks can just be very useful. So maybe another thing that we did on another project is we worked with, well, a former executive that had retired but was very well connected. So again, it just brought a different competence to the team, primarily around providing and enabling maybe the impact journey. So it would also, maybe there's different ways to think about, you know, again, those complementarities within your team.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Esther, as well. I suppose one, I'll pass on to really brief. I think you mentioned, Esther, about how you, I think managing relationships, those networks, it was a really interesting insight, but I suppose just your insight about how you prioritize your time there as well, because obviously building networks like that can be very time consuming. And if you start a connection and you don't commit time to it, that can become a negative as well if you don't manage the relationship. But I thought your insight on how the case study evolved and how that connection became such an impact from doing the case study, I think was a really interesting insight. So I think, but that definitely came up in the discussion as well, especially when people they're trying to finish PhDs or under pressure early in their career. Well, everyone's under pressure, but how do you prioritize that, and how do you manage those relationships where it's maybe more intangible? But I think, as you said to me in our earlier discussions, it's about planting those seeds that maybe come to fruition later on. So it's about really trying to plan for that.
No, for sure. I mean, with key stakeholders, there's probably certain touch points. I mean, sometimes it's managing the relationship, even if we have an early study idea, and I would just email them again, just, hey, you know, we're planning something else. Would love to chat over virtual coffee. Would you mind giving me 20 minutes, half an hour of your time? So it's a general link in. We can also chat. It's a loose. It's not like a big ask, but it enables maybe a touch point. Similarly, if there is any output that comes from the study, I would also always relay that back to my key stakeholders, even if they weren't fully involved in that study per se, or key stakeholders. But I would take it as an opportunity to link in, to show, hey, I'm still on the scene, I'm still active in that space. There is work ongoing and trying to, you know, to maintain maybe some kind of link relationship at that time. And sometimes, again, it opens doors that are coming, hey, really interesting, coming back to, you know, really interesting, would love you to come in and give a talk to our executive team, or we're working on X, Y, and Z at the moment. So it's those kind of yeah, if I have something maybe to either to ask them, to have a light touch ask, or if I have maybe something to share back in a loose way, that also just to do it on at a personal level with some key stakeholders to try to just with networks, we all have big networks, maybe on LinkedIn, lots of connections, but not all of them are really active, right? Or they are a lot of latent ties, so to speak, but not very active relationships. I'm trying to reanimate, on a frequent basis, some of those ties that otherwise could go dormant, or maybe a bit too dormant in terms of, those ties with key stakeholders, to try to keep them relevant and active.
Great, Donal, thank you, and Esther too. Jonathan, we might pass over to you.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks to Vicky, Sive, and Stephen as well. We had a great conversation. The first question is probably fairly easy, Esther. They want to know how many hours in the day do you work, given what you get through. I'm really impressed with what you've done, and in terms of your conversation. I suppose two quick questions, I suppose. One was around does impact differ depending on the field of research that you're in? And the second one was around how important is impact really becoming for, recruitment and selection and promotion?
Okay, so how many hours do I work? You know what? I'm actually not a workaholic. I know sometimes people, they ask me, you must be working late, and I know I don't. I have 2 young kids, so everybody who has young kids, once you come home, that family life takes over. Similarly on the weekends, and I love my holidays. That's maybe the continental European influence. We love our, really long holidays during summer. But I find it, what I have definitely found for me, disconnecting and reconnecting, and you see things differently, especially when it comes to research. You may get these new ideas for projects, or suddenly you see what's wrong with the paper and you see how you can fix it up. So it definitely works, great believer in that. Though I work hard when I work, so I try to minimize distractions in terms of emails or phone, those kind of things. So I try to be focused, but no crazy hours. Sorry, just on that. I don't know if you meant it jokingly, but I thought it's also important to say in terms of work-life balance, because I don't want to create any kind of impression. Work-life balance is important, and trying to build a sustainable career, because otherwise you'll get frustrated and burned out, and it's not worth it. Okay.
No, I think you're right. I think that is important to point out, Esther. I think that is important, that work-life balance. Yeah.
Yeah, and often, because we're so passionate about our research, it's sometimes not the easiest to maintain boundaries, but it's important, as we all know. Does impact differ? Oh yeah, hugely. Of course, it can come in so many different shapes or forms. So, for example, one area where I would not have impact yet, but maybe again we're working towards it, hopefully, is maybe policy, because my impact is primarily top management leader focused, or my research primarily speaks to that. So that obviously opened a certain impact or benefit. It speaks to a certain beneficiary, so to speak. Some of you may work more on frontline employees. Others may work more on, I don't know, on policy relevant topics. So again, to Anya's point, really knowing your beneficiaries and thinking about the different types of impact is super helpful. And I think even when I presented maybe the example, that we are working on at the moment, where we think we can really demonstrate impact with solid evidence. I mean, there are other ways we're engaging and sharing outputs and engaging with our stakeholders, but we felt that's perhaps the one avenue or one journey or one pathway that's at the moment at least stands out most, where we're the closest, we think, in terms of really demonstrating. Because as I said, now we're going back a year after, and our initial conversations actually show, it did help, but we need to quantify it and really get very strong testimonials and so forth, because the evidence at the moment is weak or absent for that very last step. But we pondered about that for some time, where do we have the strong pathway and could double down to really tell a compelling story at the end. think, was there another question, Jonathan? Were there 3 questions? Sorry.
Yeah, just the final question was, how important is impact becoming for recruitment and selection, and for recruitment and for promotion?
Obviously, as head of unit, I also involved in hiring decision, and we have had over the last couple of years, I've probably, even in my unit, we've probably hired more than 10 academic staff. So I'm in my 4th year as head of unit, more than 10 academic staff, all at assistant professor level, entry level roles. So at that level, we would appreciate that. Sorry, in terms of their job requirements, we definitely have, even in the essential requirements, something around potential for impact. So it's not demonstrated impact yet. It's sort of, we want to see the potential for. So then, even in terms of when we screen application documents, we would look at, are you on that impact journey? And can you, maybe to Anya's point, and that's maybe something that we can probe more during interview, but we will definitely, we have questions around that, where do they see impact, probing into, do you know beneficiaries, what have they done already? So we do look into those type of things, but we want to see a start of a journey and some meaningful engagement with the key beneficiaries around sharing outputs, maybe creating awareness and so forth. And again, maybe, I mean, we have a lot of institutions here represented, and maybe some of the others are also involved in hiring decisions. And I don't know if that's, that's now I'm talking obviously about discipline of management in University of Galway. It may again slightly differ across the institutions, but we certainly have it woven into the hiring criteria and then probed into interview, appreciating the career stage.
Great, thanks, Esther.
Great, Esther. Thank you. And thanks, Johnny. I think it's really interesting to hear about the early career perspective there, that, the expectations aren't insanely high, but that you need to be thinking about it and have your eye on it and maybe discuss at interview is really interesting to hear. So Claire.
Thank you, James. Esther, again, thank you. Anya, thank you. Esther, I'm learning loads, whatever about everybody else. We had, again, I'll be very brief, because some of the same material came up in our group. Avril, Niamh, Anna, and I think Robert was there in the background somewhere. Avril is our research officer in the business school of DCU. I asked her to come along. She's that research impact research officer and focused a lot on funding. So that was interesting in itself. So again, things that came up, which I won't ask you questions on because you've discussed them, is different institutions have different perspectives, and that makes it difficult then for an early career academic to figure out what to do. So ultimately, it's about looking at the perspective of the university or institution you might like to be in, but also recognizing that you may not end up there. So you need to be aware of what the other institutions are doing. There, kind of Anne said it also, recognizing the fact that the definition of impact is still in the citations publications space for some institutions, but it's moved further in towards SDGs in another institution. So again, that awareness is very important. Again, questions around how to plan for impact, and now we have lots of tools on the slides that I shared, on what you shared, Esther. Anya's after putting more links up there. Avril shared another link there from SFI. So those tools are very useful. And Esther, I loved the photograph of you actually using the canvas, so that's going to shortly be on LinkedIn and Twitter. And because that was Esther evidencing impact in action. So again, how to plan for impact. And then the thing that did come up across the people in the room who are doing their PhDs and very early stages for the most part, is it's still hard for them to think about where they're at now and connecting it to that impact story. So while this has helped, I guess my question is, any other tips from you? I think your advice on think of the beneficiary and look at the tools, e.g. Canvas, is 2 good tips. Any other tips for the people in the room who are, they're early in their PhDs, they're still worrying about producing a paper or getting their PhD, and now trying to think about what do they do now for that impact element, which is more important now than it would have been when I started, for example.
you know, I mean, even we're just reflecting back on maybe the PhD journey when Donal and I and others were office sharing, but just having really chatting it over maybe with your peers, I think there could be huge benefit in that. Because even when we brainstorm as a team, it might just open ideas that you haven't seen before. Maybe someone knows someone that you're not connected yet into those networks. So maybe amongst your peer network could be super useful to share. This is my research topic. This is my impact journey, or my impact canvas. Any thoughts, any feedback? Maybe do the same with your supervisor. I think, managing your supervisor is obviously important. Bring it to your supervisor, I would say, and say, hey, really want to plan for this. In our next meeting, would you mind if we spend half an hour? I'll come with a draft canvas to chat it through. I would take it from there and then plan little steps. Don't, I wouldn't plan for the big, winning the Nobel Prize and whatever and saving 10 million lives, but meaningful little steps. And asking, I think, I think Ireland, as I said, a key advantage is it's a small community. So there's always someone who knows somebody. And if you have a really good project, really good idea, and show the initiative, doors will open for you. So that would be my advice, and take it step by step.
Thank you very much, Esther. That is very good advice and links neatly into the remainder of this session. So if you can stay with us, great. It's only 10 minutes of me summing up or less, depending on how fast I speak. But in case you do have to leave, again, Esther, thank you so much. Donal, thanks for working with Esther to organize this. Anya, thank you so much. This was, as I said, a learning experience for me and the committee. We had great fun just talking about this before we even started running out today's session. So I hope everybody got some value out of it, but most especially Esther, thank you for your story and your honesty. I think the nuts and bolts is extremely helpful. And Anya, thank you for all the tools. We definitely need those. So I'm just going to sum up here for a second, if everyone can bear with me, and then we will be good to go. So just to let you all know what else is coming up for the Early Career Development Network, and I would love to see you all there, including Esther and Anya. We have some nice events lined up, and we have other ideas in the pipeline. But just for your diary, to mark it off now, October 21st to 25th, we are holding a virtual PhD Writers Retreat. TCD, Trinity College Dublin, is going to host it for us, Stephen Kilroy. This is a very good opportunity to A, get some writing done, and B, build your, as Esther said, your network of early career researchers, academics, not just within your own institution, but across the country, which is more important now than ever. Then you have, next time we have the conference is being hosted in MTU this year. And as part of that conference, they are holding a doctoral colloquium. And as part of that doctoral colloquium, we are holding a workshop, which is going to build on the back of today's session. We're tentatively calling it Actioning Impact, but it would be useful, those of you who can make it, that's where we we will hold a workshop to help you actually articulate what you are doing now as an early career academic and put it into something tangible that you can communicate. So we will use some of the tools that have been presented here today in a workshop format, so you will leave with work actually done. So if you can make the doctoral colloquium and that workshop, we will take today and make it action it and turn it into a product that you can actually use, which I think would benefit many of you based on the questions that have come up. There will be another virtual PhD Writers Retreat in February, March, date to be confirmed. There will be another event like today in March, April, but the focus will be on academic service. And there will be another virtual Writers Retreat, October, November. University of Limerick is going to hold that. Christina, if you look at the link, there's a link there to the IAM Ireland ECDN events. So we're always rolling out these types of events as listed here, but keep your eyes open for what else we will come up with, which I would like your input on. Here's the conference. So I want to say a few words to keep you all involved, which is the committee would love for all of you to not just turn up today, but to stay involved in the ECDN events and this network. Academic careers are fundamentally very rewarding. We do this because we're passionate about what we do, our research, our teaching. We're challenged in what we do. We get to be creative, we get to be autonomous, we get to do diverse things. It's extremely interesting listening to Esther. She's not just doing research, she's working with industry. However, they can be quite individual also, these careers, and they can be lonely. You could be the only one in town on a particular topic, on a particular method. And sometimes you might want to talk to somebody who isn't your supervisor or in your institution because you don't want to tell them what you really are thinking. And you might need some more support than exists within your institution on a topic or a method. So this is what we are aiming this network to be, a group of academics and early career researchers and early career academics who can connect with each other for knowledge, for support, and for a network of future research collaborators. Again, something that has come up today. Within this network are potential future research collaborators or advisors, depending on where you get stuck. There is a drive towards, impact. There's a drive towards multidisciplinary research, a drive to differentiate yourself from everybody else. And so having an access to a network like this of people across the country broadens the network of people that you can connect to for all those purposes, knowledge and support. So we would like you to stay in touch and stay involved and tell your friends so that they join our events going forward as well. And last but not least, I would welcome, I still have to figure out how to do QR codes. So when I become technologically literate, I will add them to future sessions. But for now, I'm happy if any of you have any feedback on today's session, I would love to hear it. Feel free to email me. I'll ping my email in the chat in a second, claire.gubbins@dcui.ie. And in addition to feedback, if any of you on the back of today's session have ideas for what else you would like to see ECDN do that would inform our future work, we can't promise to do it all. We are all volunteers in the IAM and the ECDN committee, but it would certainly enable us to focus what we do on things that you as early career researchers and academics actually need. So that would be very beneficial. So that is all for me. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. And again, in case I haven't said it enough, most especially to Esther and Anya for their time and their input, which made today's session basically a success. Without people like you being willing to do this, we don't have a committee, an events, or a network. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us, and it's a great initiative, and it's lovely that you have the network and are so engaged in bringing it forward and enhancing the support. So it's amazing, because it does make a big difference, I think, to any academic's career to have your local bodies. As much as you need your international network as well, but having that local community is super important. So yeah, you're doing great service there. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Thanks again. So on that basis, I will say goodbye and
Mr. Thanks, Claire. Thanks all.